Hi, so this is going to be the first in a series which is looking at kind of basic foundations of a good diet. So all the stuff I tell my clients initially when they first come to see me. And more now I've been working with clients via distance. And so the idea is that this will just save some time. You can listen to this sequence and you'll have a basic understanding of some of the foundations of a good diet. So hopefully that it'll be of use to future clients and current clients as well, and maybe just a few of you out there who want to know a few basics about diet. So there might be a bit of noise in the background because there's building work going on next door. So I'm currently in Lanzarote surfing, hence the hair and the unshaven look. But still seeing patients, and my current client, who's meant to be chatting with me now, cancelled, so I figured I'd do something useful for people. So the way I normally start is to talk about protein. So protein is a fundamental building block of everything. So we're made of protein. If you're looking at your muscles, liver, everything's made of protein in our body pretty much. And so if you end up with kind of common symptoms of protein deficiency, it'll be things like muscle aches, and often people will have kind of longer term more issues with cognition, repair, kind of how you're thinking and feeling. And it's very, very common I see in people's diets that they'll either be getting too much protein in a single sitting or not enough across the whole day. So how much is enough? A good general rule for most people is 1 gram per kilogram. So if you weigh about 80 kilograms, so I'm around 80 kilograms at the moment, I need about 80 grams of protein a day. So then the question I always ask people is, well, how much is 80 grams of protein? And have a think about that. Think of an answer. You're probably not going to think of an answer. You're just listening lazily whilst you're doing something else. But actually ask yourself the question, how much do you reckon, where could you get 80 grams of protein from? Like, how much steak would you need to eat for 80 grams of protein? And come up with an answer to that question. So hopefully you've done that. Roughly speaking, so if we're thinking just about steak, you'd be needing at least 300 grams of steak, maybe 400 grams. Depends on the cut, depends on how much water's in there. It can vary, but potentially as little as 200 grams of steak could give you that much. But to put this in context, I had one client who had significant psychological issues who would go to a local steak restaurant and once, twice a week would put away 600 grams of steak in a single sitting, which is mind-blowing, 600 grams of steak. So she is getting over 120 grams of protein in there easily, probably a bit more. And this was a 70 kilo lady who was significantly overweight for her height, but you're really going to struggle to digest that much protein. And if it's undigested protein is sitting in your gut, that's when you can really start looking at getting a lot of significant bowel health issues from more kind of creepy crawlies in terms of parasites, fungal overgrowths, these type of issues, and also protein, particularly overconsumption of protein in that type of way, has an association with bowel cancer. So it's definitely not something you want to be doing in terms of overeating that much. But more commonly I see is people not getting enough protein. So if you look at it in terms of, for me, for example, is roughly 80 grams if I'm not too active. Then for that I'd be looking at probably getting something like around 20 grams in on 2 of my meals and maybe a little bit of snacks and something else. So then if we're looking at breakfast, you really want to get, if you're me, you're 80 kilos, you want to be looking at getting about 20 grams in for breakfast. So what do most people do for protein for breakfast? Well, it'll be eggs. And how much protein is in an egg? Well, 7 grams in a big egg. The smaller egg could be as little as 5 grams of protein. So then 3 eggs, it's going to get you close towards 20 grams. And then if you're having a little something else with it, maybe that's some toast, a few little veggies, something like that to go with it, you might be getting yourself up towards that 20 grams of protein in a breakfast. If alternatively you're going for something along the lines of porridge, then you're really not looking at a lot of protein. So a typical serving of porridge might give you 7 grams, something like that, not a whole lot more. If you're adding in nuts and seeds, how many grams of protein do you reckon is in 100 grams of nuts? So it'll be about 20 grams of protein. 100 grams of nuts or seeds, to put that on top of porridge is a lot. Most people will be doing at best a handful, and so you're probably getting at most about another 3 to 4 grams of protein there, which is useful. And if you're down at the kind of 50 gram range, then maybe if you're getting 10 grams in of protein with breakfast, that's pretty useful. And again, yogurt, you're going to be looking at somewhere around 7 grams of protein for 100 grams of yogurt. And you might quite easily be able to sort of get 100 grams is quite a reasonable sort of portion of yogurt for most people to get on board with. So then lunch, chicken breast, 150 grams is a typical size chicken breast, your kind of average chicken breast. And that will give you about, have a think, how much you reckon that would be? And as with most things, it works out per 100 grams. Most meats, nuts, seeds, etc. will tend to give you about 20 grams of protein. And so 150 gram typical chicken breast will give you about 35 grams of protein. So it's still a decent amount. And so if you're getting something like that in with lunch and dinner, then it's quite easy for somebody like me to get up around 90 grams, which is enough if you're doing you're staying pretty active. If you're being more active, so if I'm surfing twice a day, I probably need to be getting close to 1.5 grams a day. So that's taking me personally up to around 120 grams of protein a day, which is a lot. And that's when you'd be looking at maybe adding in nuts and seeds as an extra snack to get some more protein in. Those are your kind of main sources. Won't address vegetarians today, because getting enough protein as a vegetarian can be done, and a vegetarian diet can be fantastically healthy, but it is a challenge. It is not easy to eat really healthy as a vegetarian. So those are some real basics, just to get a very basic understanding of putting together a normal, healthy, what I consider a healthy diet. And throughout this series, we're going through protein, carbohydrate, fats, and fruit and veg, and looking at the basic building blocks of kind of building up a healthy lifestyle, and trying to look at more nutrition from what you want to get in rather than what you shouldn't eat. So trying to go around a shop and think, oh good, I need to get my protein. How much protein do I need? How many fruit and veg do I need? How much fats do I need, and which fats do I need? And what can I do for good digestive health? And kind of looking at food more from that perspective, and having more perspective on carbohydrate as being useful for energy rather than something that's going to make you fat. And so hopefully through this series I can just outline the basics, but give everybody a good understanding and a building block of where to go on kind of a positive attitude towards looking at your food, understanding what you need, and hopefully making yourself feel a bit better. If you've got any questions, feel free to comment. Very useful. I think you're meant to get people to subscribe, so please do that. And if you would like a consult with me, then I do have a waiting list. But if you email me at kieran@kieranmacphail.com, then I can put you on my waiting list. And I do work with people of all sort of income levels, and I will do some work. I will work with anybody essentially. It's just on a first come, first serve basis, as long as people I'm suitable to work with you, and you just pay whatever you need to pay. Hi, so this is going to be the